There we go. Very good. We just hit the live button. Very excited about today's guest. And, anytime we have Quint Studer, it's always a great day. So definitely glad to have Mr. Quint Studer. Many of you know him. He is the founder of the Studer Group, as well as the Studer Community Institute, and also the owner of the Pensacola Blue Wahoos. So welcome to the show, Quint Studer.
Wahoo! We're glad to be here. Thank you.
And also the author of this great book right here. If you guys haven't picked it up, that's a wonderful book, Busy Leader's Handbook. Lots of cool little nuggets in that book. I'm sure we'll probably cover some of that.
It was really neat, Rollis. In the last year, I was AUPHA, which oversees programs in healthcare administration, had me do a webinar. And with the COVID, I just said, a lot of things are virtual now. So if you want me to speak to your class, I'll speak to your class as long as it's virtual. And it was really neat because I've done this. I got Missouri on Friday. I did Baylor last week. And a fella said, well, I was going to write questions, but then I read your Busy Leader Handbook, and all the answers to the questions I had are truly in some of the chapters. So it's really a nice book where you don't have to read it cover to cover. But if you're looking at a specific topic, you want to delve into it. It's really what I try to do is find 41 best practices that most people in leadership or supervision are going to face at some time in their career.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. And then I'm excited to talk about some of the new things that we're going to talk about today too. But our main discussion, folks who are just coming in, it's about how to find success in working with leaders inside and outside your organization. We actually already have some folks that were ready to go. We got Barbara Scott Payne is here, Dr. Rosina Malaska. They're already saying hello from Indiana. We have, of course, Joanne. She's coming in from Philippines. So all over, we're all ready to hear some of your best tips. Let's start off there, though. What would you suggest when it comes to working with leadership, whether you're a leader or whether you're staff, whatever the case is, what are some good ways we can interact with leaders within our organization first?
Well, I think you always want to be interested versus interesting. And that's really hard as a leader, because many times as a leader, we're sort of interesting. I mean, that's how we got promoted. We were an employee who was interesting. We were sometimes, just more solution oriented than our coworkers. So you get promoted. And it's just so easy to drive into our own topics instead of going into somebody else's topic. So, for example, today I was on a call with Rodney Tucker and a bunch of great people, University of Alabama, Birmingham, on serious illness and how to handle it. And it was interesting because I've known Rodney for a long time, but Dr. Michael Barnett was on the call. And, I have to be careful too, because, I always say, Rollis, I'm tired of talking about me. Why don't you talk about me for a while, okay? So I get it. I'm watching myself all the time. I'm like the plumber with leaky pipes. So when I'm telling everyone this, I'm talking to myself clearly to really show an interest in the other person. For example, I heard a great story from a student and getting his master's degree, and they sat him at a table with the CEO of the system. And of course, he's a nervous wreck. So all he did is say to the CEO of the system is, I'm really interested in your career. Well, what happened, of course, is the CEO of the system did most of the talking. And I'll guarantee you at the end of that dinner, he said, what a great person that was getting their master. So I think it's Harvard talks about that appreciative inquiry. I think it's finding out a little bit about that person. And then I also think if you're working for someone, and this is one of my favorite tips of all time, because one of the questions I get, Rollis, is, with everything so busy, particularly with the pandemic and some of these other things, normally some things are going to slide, and it's normal. I mean, when you're sitting here just trying to get staff in your hospital, you're not going to possibly do some things you've done in the past. Well, one of them is training and development and investment. That got pushed in some organizations, most, to the side. Mm-hmm. How can we release all our leaders for 2 days of development when we need them on the units? We need them doing it. But even for a lot of people who come up to me over the years, Rollis, because I talk an awful lot about development, investment. In fact, for millennials, the number one reason they'll stay on a job is I'm learning something at the company I'm currently working at. So I tell people to take control of their own development by letting their leader know they want to be developed, by making an appointment with them, sending the questions ahead of time. I want to tell me what I'm doing well so I can keep doing it. What are my opportunities for improvement? Let me go over my priorities, because I find, I give people a list to do and I forget I give them a list. And then, so can we align our priorities? And then what
Yes.
training and development would you recommend that I have? Now, in a mentorship role, the question is really define what it's going to look like. What does the mentee want to get out of it? What's the achievable outcome? So I think clarity and development, clarity of goals. The Heath brothers in their book Switch When Change is Hard say 80% of failure is a lack of clarity. That's why I believe the last suggestion is always check on the outcome. Because what you really want to say is, let's talk about if I'm successful here, what is the outcome? So, for example, on that call I was with the University of Alabama, Birmingham, they want to pick my brain on developing this serious illness program. Taking it outside of Alabama. And on the phone call, I said, for this to be a successful phone call, when this is over, what would you like it to accomplish? And I just think that's so important. But sometimes, because healthcare people are such type A personalities, we just get right into the action without spending a little bit of time up front talking about the desired outcome.
I love that. Okay, I want to just delve into a little bit more, because I think it's so true about asking what, if we're successful, what is a successful outcome? What does that look like? Give me an example of clarity. What are some good examples of clarity? Because I want to make sure we make that clear for our audience. What you mean when you say clarity? What are ways we could provide that?
I think clarity is the desired outcome would be the way I'd say it. And then how do we measure the desired outcome? So you just mentioned the Blue Wahoos. I was just over there meeting with people, and I met with Greg, who's a group salesperson. Okay. Clarity is really going to mean how much group sales he has made by this date. I think when you get to healthcare, clarity could be turnover. Clarity could be infection rate. So, for example, when I was president of a hospital, I had a doctor. First weekend on the job, I must have made something that we were going to do something, and he beeped me and said, I'm on a unit. I'm really upset. My patient got a hospital-acquired infection, and we have too many hospital-acquired infections here. I just want you to know that. That was my introduction to Dr. Frank Lahowski. And he was trying to be helpful, not hurtful. Right. So that Monday, I came in and asked our infection control director, tell me about how many hospital-acquired infections do we have? And I'm making this, it was more global, but I realized we had way more than you should have. Now, you couldn't go from 1% to the next overnight, but it's letting everybody know and how to measure. So again, I'll go into a little more detail. We wanted to get it down to 2%, which was sort of best practice. Now, we were at 9% at the time, but at different levels of infections. 5 would have been okay, but 2 is really where we wanted to go. Well, we set it for her, and then she said, but I can't do this alone. I said, well, who else is important? She said, well, the nurse managers. So then we went back into the evaluations of those nurse managers and loaded in infection rate into there. So I think it's how are we going to measure the outcome? And I think timing is really important, because what we've learned from Peter Senge and his work with the 5th discipline, we're always going to have some creative tension if we're improving. And the creative tension is defined as the gap between where we're at and where we want to be. And as a leader, I'm really the manager of creative tension in a way. If we want to go from 9 to 2, and I tell the infection control person, I want you to get there in 6 weeks, the only thing that's going to happen is she's going to be looking for another job, because I've just set her up for failure, because it's unrealistic.
Right.
But if she said, can we go from 9 to 8 in the next 2 months, then 8 to 7? And if we agree on the timing, so I think you have to agree on what's the outcome, how are we going to measure it, and what's the timing. And then the fourth thing I always want to ask Rollis is, what skills can I be helpful with? Because how can I help you? Which is, what skills do you need? Who else do you need to be helpful to you? So I asked that question at the Blue Wahoos, like, who else do you need to finish this project? And the other thing, Rollis, is really a healthy thing to do. What are some barriers I can help you remove? So what barriers do you have that we have to talk about? We used to give out an axe for breaking down barriers. And so, because sometimes you don't know what they are. So
Right.
those are some things that I think are really helpful. And I know I get into the trenches here, but that's what leadership is. Leadership's being in the trenches.
Absolutely. Okay, you just dropped some serious gold, but I want to see what the audience has to say about it. They seem to
There
like
we
it.
go.
There we go. And we have lots of comments that have just come in. Dr. Malaska, she says, I love that creative tension that you mentioned. She says that. We also have, hello, Ninfa. Ninfa's coming in. She says, hi, Quint Studer. So she knows you well. So very, very well. So I want to ask you this. Now, let's kind of move our focus outside the organization, because sometimes we're so internally focused, we get lost in just that and not really helping to develop our other leaders. And I remember on our last show, you brought a great point out about making the community better, not just looking at our own little world. And if we make the community better, it helps all of us, kind of like the whole rising tide lift all boats thing. So give me some of your best tips on us dealing with leadership outside of our organization.
Well, it's interesting. I just did a webinar yesterday, and if anybody wants the copy, I can probably get it from the company on how can healthcare and education collaborate to improve the community. And so one of the things I find, and healthcare does a lot of things very well. And one of the things that and you might think you got to be kidding me, but it's really true, particularly in small businesses and communities, they really don't spend enough time and energy training and developing leaders. So, for example, if we're working with the Cy-Fair Fire Department, which is your fire department.
Yes.
Amy read my book, Busy Leader Handbook, and hired us to work with her team. And you would think the fire department would do a lot of training, and they do a ton of training, but not in leadership, not in supervision. Yet, I bet you if you go to your local hospital, you have so many great ones. I was talking to Chuck Stokes, who used to run one of your hospitals there in Houston a little while ago. They normally do a better job in leadership training, and they do a better job in supervisory training. So one of the things you can do is open it up to those. So, for example, in Palatka, Florida, seeing the hospital there, they're doing supervisory training. Now, it doesn't mean it has to be all the same, but I was on the curriculum committee of the Harvard Business School for leadership, and basically, I don't care what you're in, you have to learn how to hire. You have to learn how to do process improvement. You have to learn how to communicate. You have to know how to do reward and recognition. You have to know how to do financials. You have to know how to create revenue streams at times. There's basic leadership skills. So I think truly opening up the training that's happening somewhere to other small businesses. And let's just say your energy coolant systems and you're doing training of your supervisors. Well, why not open it up to other leaders in the community, other small businesses? Because those are the ones that aren't getting the training. And those are the ones that aren't going to go out of town. They're not going to pay to fly to Vegas and pay because they're running their plumbing company. They're running their hair salon. But I think the goal of building a community is building your middle class. And you build your middle class by providing training and development to small businesses so they can grow. So I think there's a lot of collaboration that go on in training and development is just one area that we do this all the time. If people want to go to studeri.org, we'll give everything away, by the way. My not-for-profit, we have over 900 small businesses that are part of this training. And now a lot of it's local in Pensacola, but they're still online. We have all these success stories. I used to have 2 employees. Now I have 6. I used to have 8. Now I have 18. Because really 99% of jobs, or 95, are small companies growing. And we spend way too much time worrying about attracting outside companies to our community and not take the ones we currently have and helping them grow.
I love this. It makes so much sense what you're saying, because if we're helping to train some of these local leaders in the area, it makes those businesses better. But another thing I just thought about as you were talking, the person who has to give that training to them, those principles are further implanted on that person's mind too. So I think it even makes that person who works at the healthcare organization better. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I think I see we got Kristen Baird on the line. Everything I've learned and talking about, I learned from her. So I'm just want to appreciate, love her very much. And I think so. It was really a neat seminar I did because I've been on both sides. I was a teacher for 10 years in healthcare, and I talked about, so many things that healthcare can do to help a community. For example, 80 to 85% of the brain is developed by age 3. So where does education really start? Now, we could say prenatal, but sometimes you don't get to a mom, especially in lower socioeconomic status in the prenatal world. But what you can do is get them in the hospital. So we've worked on a partnership here in Escambia County with Harvard and with the University of Chicago. So before a mom leaves a hospital, she gets a tutorial on how to build her child's brain. And we have peer-reviewed research now that shows we're turning the dial. So those are the types of things that you can do. So now you've got the healthcare provider helping the kindergarten teacher by helping mom build the brain. We do something called Entrecon, which is, again, small businesses. So I just think you got to be focused. If Jim Clifton of Gallup says 2 of the top 3 techniques in building a community is helping the small businesses you have grow and helping people start small businesses. So if people go to studeri.org, they'll see an asset map that I think you'll like. I hear your background music might be a little loud too. So
okay, let's see if we can fix that then. We can fix that, no problem. Let's see here. And by the way, we've got a few folks who have come in with comments. I want to make sure that I acknowledge them as well. We have Rosina, I read hers. Stanley Harper, he says, good day, Rollis and Mr. Studer. We also have Lona Small. She says, hello. She's coming in from John Hopkins. Rosina said, totally agree with your statement about not developing leaders. We need to do that more. Kristen Baird says, love that idea about sharing training. And Barbara Scott was nice enough to put in the web address for us, studeri.org. Supervisors and middle management are lacking in leadership training. So she agrees with that. And then Kristen says, you're too kind. So let's talk about what are some ways to get started. So let's say we're a leader. We've got some training we want to share with others. What's a good way for us to get started? What would you suggest in that process?
Sure. And again, I'm talking small ball here. I'm talking to communities. So probably these are small and mid-market cities, like, Kristen was in Fort Atkinson or the Watertown, Wisconsin's of the world. Small and mid-market cities. Springfield, Ohio is an example that we know very well. It's basically what I call it is just try to do it. There goes your music. Just try to do a symposium. So when we announce, so you got, I'm hearing music.
Okay, I'm stopping it right now, actually. We'll run into a little bit of an issue here. Sorry.
At least play something I can sing the words to.
Oh my goodness. Guys, sorry.
Yeah, baby. Hey, some Barry White. Well, yeah, I like Barry White.
There we go. Sorry. Go for it. Yep.
Hey, baby, Barry White. Anyway, so I think what we do here is we start real small with the symposium, and there are certain topics that are just very, very popular. Some of the topics that people grab on right away is hiring talent. And Kristen Baird, for example, is an expert on be the leader that nobody wants to leave. So what you want to do is offer something in the area of hiring is popular. I think customer service is extremely popular. How to help your workforce become better in customer service is a popular one in the local community. I think having difficult conversations, which either things like service recovery or something just like how to measure. A lot of people don't measure. I'm talking about, smaller businesses, but, America's built on small businesses.
Right.
So those are some of the type of topics that we get into. We had a really popular one. We had Colby Jubenville talk about emotional IQ, how to measure and develop your emotional IQ. Another one that's quite does well here is something called managing by strengths. So people come in and they find out how they can assess their own preferences for how they work, the people they work with, so they work better as a team. So early on, we just started with one or two, and then they kept growing. So now we offer 19 classes for small businesses. We do days of symposium. We do some things online, and that grew into then mentoring. I'll give you an example. Almost every community has some more senior people that have been very successful in business.
Mm-hmm.
And these people want to give back. So I find small businesses, it's a lonely world out there. You're running a bakery shop. You don't want to sit here and tell the whole world you're a little concerned about are you going to make it?
Right.
Or what do you do? Or how do you handle the employee who you're worried if you fire them, you don't have any help, but they're toxic in the organization. So we create what we call roundtables, and we put 6 to 8 small businesses at a roundtable. They're assigned a veteran, senior person. Heck, we have the past president of Waffle House as one of our facilitators.
Wow.
Facilitators that lives in the community. And they actually develop such a mentor relationship. Some of those mentor outside the actual roundtable. So these are, I tell everybody, part of your job is development. You're a chief development officer, and I know some people are on the line the same thing. When I sit down with the CEO, particularly in healthcare, I'll say, let's go over your executive team. And he'll go over the executive team, and let's say and let's say there's 8. And then I'll say, let's walk through them. And she'd start off with your very, very best. And she'll maybe hit 4 or 5 that are very, very best. And then she'll say, these 2 are okay. And this one I'm really concerned about. And then I'll say, well, what if all of them were as good as these 5? And she'll say, that would be great. I said, then that's your goal, is to either get those other 3 up there, or you might have to find replacements for them. And then I also do an exercise with them, a senior executive team. I go over how many people report directly to those in that room. So let's say that's a employee group of 2,000, and they'll go around, and somebody might say, I have 8, I have 7, I have 6. Remember, these are senior executives, so they don't have like a med-surg nurse manager
Right.
who has 70, or an ER nurse manager has 55. They've got, it started off ironic. You're the most highly trained, the most educated. They have the less direct reports. So anyway, they have that many. And then I said, okay, when we had the executive team up, I have these 2,000 employees, 90 of them report to you. Okay. So I said, that means 1,910 report to somebody else. So the key is, how do you help that next layer under that group,
yes.
that what would normally term the middle management team, be the best? Whoever has the best middle management team will have the best results. And that's why every senior executive team's job is develop that group below them. And sometimes, and I love organizational development departments. I get it. I love training the development departments. I get it. I get all those things. But you got to be careful that people then don't step away from their own responsibility to develop talent because they think that's somebody else's job.
Oh, yeah. I could see that.
So what those departments can do is help with curriculum, help with awareness, help with measurement, but you've got to own the development. So I was lucky enough to have Shannon Libert, who just got, I see is in the chat, work for me. And what was really neat, she came in as in human resources, as I would call more of a personnel type director, not the top spot. Today, she's a senior executive of a major healthcare company. And it's because, one, she developed herself, but our goal was to provide her with the culture that provided her the tools to develop herself.
Oh, I love that. Well, welcome, Shannon. She says, love the roundtable. She says, I highly recommend them. Thanks for having Quint on. Couldn't resist joining. I'm so glad you joined. And Lona, she mentioned to me, I'm going to be on her show tomorrow. She mentioned to me that she learned a ton from you, and loved your book, Hardwiring for Excellence, back in the day. If you don't mind, tell me the differences between the Hardwiring for Excellence, that book, fast forward to Busy Leaders, and then maybe the difference between that and your upcoming book.
Sure. I think Hardwiring Excellence was a book that I really wrote with the middle manager in mind, just like Busy Leader. I think the difference is, I think, I tell people I'm like that musician that had that great first album has been trying to duplicate that first album now for, Christopher Cross's first album was such a hit. He won 5 Grammys. I still like Christopher Cross. He's a Houston guy, by the way.
Oh,
Rollins.
is he? I didn't know that. I like Christopher
Yeah,
Ross.
but you're trying. So I think Hardwiring Excellence, I think, was a book that had a lot of tools and techniques, but with a lot of passion tied to it. So there's a lot of passion, a lot of stories tied to it. I think Busy Leader Handbook was much more of a tactical book. So even though Hardwiring Excellence had a lot of tactics, I think it had a lot of emotion to it and a little more of why. So what I did with if you look at Busy Leader Handbook, I think has great tactics in it, and but it's not going to capture your heart. You're probably not going to cry or laugh, and it's just a different book. It's more like on my desk at home, I have Peter Drucker's book that I every day. It's a daily reminder of Peter Drucker. Now, and I'm a big fan of Peter Drucker. Now, that book's going to give me tools and techniques, but I don't know if it's going to capture my heart.
Right.
Hardwiring Excellence, I hope, captures people's heart. And really, you talked about, and I will give people on the call here, the only time I probably will be able to do this, but I have a new book coming out in June. And those of you that Rollis send me an email at quint@quintstuder.com, I will send them a complimentary copy of this book when it comes out in June.
Wow.
And the book is called The Calling, Why Healthcare is Special. So it's just for healthcare workers. And what I really like about the book is I think it's Hardwiring Excellence 2021. And what it does is I feel, and I know I'm going on too long, I apologize, but I think the DNA I notice in most people, even people not in healthcare, but this is about healthcare, is they have an unbelievable DNA. They want to be useful and helpful. That's really what they're trying to do. Now, they come into healthcare with a full bank account. I mean, if you want to see excited nurses, go to their pinning ceremony. If you want to see excited physician, go to when they get their white lab coat and the whole family there. It's a lot like I live in a Navy town. It's like somebody gets their wings to fly an airplane in the Navy or the Marines. And so do people that don't do clinical work have a calling. So let's think of the pandemic. Now, when I'm a housekeeper, I'm in security, I'm in food service, I'm in IT, those types of things, finance. I want to be in healthcare too. Mm-hmm. I could do those anywhere. In my book, The Calling, I tell the story of a parking lot attendant that had a huge impact on a couple at Vanderbilt. Their child was born with special needs. They were trying to get the assessment down, the diagnosis down. They went to Vanderbilt, and it was overwhelming for them. They parked in the parking garage, went into the clinic, and they walked out wondering, is this the right place for us? It was just so massive compared to what they were used to. And when they got to their car, the parking lot attendant who had saw them walk in said, I've been praying for you. They told me at that time that that's when they realized they were in the right place. Now, if that parking lot attendant was at the mall, and you came out of the mall, and they said, I've been praying for you, you might be a little bit nervous about it. But see, everybody makes a difference in healthcare, and the answer are calling. So my book's about how do you keep your emotional bank account full? Because if you start full, it only has one way to go. And Stephen Covey in 7 Essential Habits talks about emotional bank account. Mm-hmm. And what happens is we do a lot of withdrawals, but we don't do many deposits. So I was in Bennettsville, South Carolina last week. And one of the things I always say is, if you got a text right now from your boss and they said they needed to talk to you, is your first thought, oh, good, here comes reward and recognition? Or is it, oh my gosh, what did I do now? I mean, Kristen and I know I used to get paged, and the first thing that would happen with my boss is, So anyway, the question here is, so that's what the calling's about. The calling's about how do you keep your own emotional bank full? Because we all have a pilot light inside of us, and we all have an engine, a fire. And I find people like you, Rollis, you have a full fire. It's always burning, and it's burning pretty high. Sometimes it's going to get low. You're going to get physically sick. Maybe emotionally, something's going to happen. But you don't want that pilot light to go out.
Right.
And you hope that there's other people with a higher furnace burning than you that can help ignite your pilot light. So the real key of the book is what gets in the way. What do we put in the way? We might put some blockages in the way that we don't know are there. Maybe I have envy that's getting in my way, so I don't benchmark because I'm a little envious of that person. Or maybe I rationalize. Well, the problem is I don't have this money or this staff. So it talks about barriers, but then it really talks about how to not only manage your own internal flame, but how to help those about you build their emotional bank account. So it's called The Calling. I'm very pumped about it, as you can tell. I was with John Maxwell a couple of years ago. He invited 4 of us to meet with him. Somebody said, "What's your favorite book?" And he said, "The book I'm writing." And I said, "Well, that's not true to me. My favorite book is Hardwiring Excellence." And I will tell you, I now know what John Maxwell was talking about that day. So it's called The Calling, Why Healthcare is Special. It comes out, I think, June 1st or 2nd. And if anyone drops either you an email, Rollis, or me an email, we'll get their address and make sure we send them one of the very, very first copies.
Wow, that is awesome. Okay, let me just see what the audience thinks about that offer. Yeah, they love it, apparently. I do too. Thank you very much. And Barbara Scott also put in an asset map. So thank you for doing that, Barbara Scott. And many other comments came in. Okay, so great insights on the role of OD. Ninfa Escobar, Dr. Escobar mentioned that. And Shannon says, she says, I have a great mentor, Quint. Ninfa, Dr. Escobar says, Hardwiring Excellence absolutely captured my heart. And also Barbara Scott did put your email in here, which is great. Lona also talked about Hardwiring Excellence. So lots of folks talking about that. Tons of comments here. But
if you love Hardwiring Excellence, you're going to like the comment. Can I talk real quick? And
sure.
As long as we got Kristen Baird on the line, which is very exciting.
Absolutely.
The gratitude, you talked about some big announcements.
Yes,
well,
please.
I got 2 of them.
Okay.
One of them is that you heard for the first time about The Calling. I think this is the first time publicly I've talked about that book. And I'm, again, just so excited about it. And it really is. It's neat. And I always do what I've done. This book, I send it out to a lot of people, nurses, doctors, food service people. I ask them to read the book and give me feedback. And they do. And I have them fill out a questionnaire. Is there anything in there that, isn't cleared? Do I offend anyone? And I'm certainly not trying to, you don't know. And I get feedback. So the book's really a collaborative effort based on that feedback. It's called The Calling. What I'm also very pumped about is the Gratitude Symposium. And the Gratitude Symposium we announced April 2nd. We have 44 wonderful speakers, and I'm a tag along. And basically, I took the time in my life, knowing people like Wayne Young there. In fact, my old JPS day. Anyway, was great, Paul Keckley, a futurist, Jamie Orcloff, a futurist, Kristen Baird, who's going to be one of the experts. And so we have 45 of us. We've all agreed to speak. And I say that videos, they're about anywhere from 15 to 50 minutes long. We've raised money. $75,000 is going to the Daisy Foundation. $25,000 is going to AUPHA, which supports healthcare administration students. And it's free. We turned down sponsorship. This is a philanthropic effort on the 45 of us who are going out and speaking. And you can go to the Gratitude Symposium and you will just be blown away by the talent that we have that are going to be presenting and talking about a number of topics.
Awesome.
There's not a topic on there that somebody in your organization might find. And we announced it April 2nd, and we're at over 7,000 people have registered just since April 2nd.
That's
so we're very excited. So those are 2 announcements. And there we have the main man, Wayne Young.
Yes. So for those 2 announcements, I think we need this, because that's how we feel. That's how our audience already feels. Thank you for what you're doing, Quint. Really appreciate that. And we want to welcome you to the show, Mr. Wayne Young. He's the CEO of the Harris Center here in Houston, Texas. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here, and really just here to add my applause for Quint and that work. I'm excited to get registered myself.
Well, thank you. I worked in the behavioral medicine field for 3 years. I'm a recovering alcoholic in my 39th year of sobriety, so I sort of get it. I'm on the board of Hazelton Betty Ford. So I love what you did at JPS, and I'm so excited at what you're doing now with the organization there, Harris, because mental health just hasn't gotten the attention that it needs to be. And I've been doing a lot of talks on this topic for colleges because, the number 1, 2, or 3 prescribed drug in healthcare is antidepressants, which, that's fine. Many people absolutely helpful, but nice to have other things. And one of the most used benefits is our pharmaceuticals. And one of our least used benefits is employee assistance programs. And it breaks my heart because there's a stigma we've got to erase about seeking help for our brain. When nobody thinks less of us if we seek help for my shoulder or my knee.
Yeah,
absolutely. I share readily with my team that I'm a person in long-term recovery as well. About 35 years this year. And so I also try and help break down some of that stigma by providing not only that disclosure, but by encouragement. Like let's take advantage of the EAP programs. Let's take advantage of the available resources. And as some of these new digital platforms are taking hold and beginning to focus a little more on mental wellness, there's a huge opportunity there for us to impact our employee groups and our leaders and our frontline employees who do the hard work every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wayne, I know you had a question you wanted to ask Quint, so I wanted to give you an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I probably would take up more time than he would be willing to make available with all of my questions. But it was, and I've had the opportunity to implement many of your approaches and management tools and techniques over the years, both at JPS and frankly, I brought them here. We didn't have formal coaching, but I've read the book a few times. And so,
absolutely.
But if you think about the behavioral health context, and to your point, it's not quite as evolved. It does have still a lot of stigma associated with it. But if you were thinking about kind of up and coming leaders or new leaders in the behavioral health space, what would you reflect upon as probably the single most important practice that they might think about to further behavioral health, to break down stigma, to engage, to make it more accessible to the system, just kind of globally? What do you think would be the single salient thought you would want to share with them?
I'll give you 2, Wayne, that I've seen work, and I've been lucky enough to write forewords for a few books on this topic this year. I think, first of all, you have to let the organization know it's okay because they don't know. So if you look at the pain, most of our acute care healthcare systems, and you can do this it doesn't have to be healthcare, but people know the pain threshold, 1 through 10. So one of the things I've done with organizations is ask them to weigh in on if they were evaluating their organizational stress or trauma or well-being, where would it be on a 1 through 10? So I've done this with hundreds of employees, and I've done it in about 30 days, but based on a year's worth of work, about 60% of employees will tell you they think their organization is probably a 7 or an 8. That means not in stress, maybe not, they're in stress, but really moved into trauma and so on. Because stress, they believe, will go back to normal. And the shorter term trauma, they believe, will not go back to normal. And I have a lot on this information. If anyone wants to, I have a 30-minute video I'll send to anybody on this topic. So then about 30% will rank themselves a 4, 5, and 6, and about 10% rank themselves a 1, 2, or 3. Now, their organization. What you've now told everyone, it's okay to talk about this topic. I just did the University of Illinois Chicago Medical School, in fact. It's okay to talk about this topic. And they did a survey of their doctors, like about eating and about self-destructive. It was great, the data they got. Then again, because of my work at Sci-Fair, I got lucky, Wayne. I got to know firefighters. And firefighters, the Fallen Firefighter Foundation created a tool for emergency medical personnel years ago. And I didn't even know this existed till the last year. And what happens is, because these people face such stress and trauma in their job, they have a document, and we can post it and send it to you, that sort of says, where am I on the spectrum? Am I over here where I'm feeling fine, great, I got this? Am I over here where I'm struggling a bit, not all the time, but I'm having a rough time. I'm getting a rough time paying attention. I'm not eating as well as I used to. The next level is, hey, I'm going into self-destructive behavior. Could be not taking care of myself. It could be not handling my anger and emotion. The fourth phase is, I don't know if I can handle this. So what we've done in our companies too, Wayne, I have 178 employees. We basically have everyone fill out the big one. And then every supervisor, and including, I started it, cascaded to my direct reports. And we walk over this form. And we walk over this form and we say, where are you? And we've created this safe environment for someone to now say, well, I'm here. I'm here. Now, the other thing that we created, Wayne, and I can send this to you, is my not-for-profit, along with Tri-Health in Cincinnati, Ohio, created a toolkit, a resource guide. So we also give that to an employee that sort of says, you've now assessed yourself. Here's a resource guide that you can go into that talks about some self-help things you can do. Now, we allow everyone to label it as they want to label it. So, Wayne, you could put your own EAP in there. You could put your own insurance product in there. So I think you've got to open up the conversation. And it's the supervisor not judging, and hopefully sharing where they're at too. And the pandemic gives us that opportunity because, the pandemic, in a way, has made it okay to talk about this. And I saw that at UIC, and I have great respect for UIC. I read every physician, every medical student, and they talked about, are you getting less sleep, more sleep? Or, it was very shocking. Not shocking for them. I think they weren't surprised at some of the feedback, but I think they were surprised at the amount of people that are struggling that they weren't aware of. So I think it's good measurement tools that open up idea to have a good conversation. And that's where you come in, Wayne. Your type of company can help supervisors, not only in your organization, other places, learn how to have those conversations. Because we're not diagnosing. We're just opening up the conversation and then giving them the path to go a little bit farther. So my own company, we had at 178 employees. Last year, we had 3 people use the EAP. This year, we had 68. And I don't think we had 68.
Wow.
I was really excited about that. It's like reporting near misses in the hospital, because you don't have to use an EAP just for depression. You can use it for caregiving. You can use it financial. You can use it for time management. You can use it for all sorts of things. So I'm very excited about that, because that's why Wayne, like you, I share where I'm at. People said to me the other one, why do you share that? 3 weeks ago, I was talking to a college MBA program, and 2 days later, a guy contacted me and said, I think I have a problem with alcohol, and I'll probably see him on a Zoom call tonight at 7:00, and he's now sort of, in the solution right now.
That's awesome. Well, Quint, I'm incredibly grateful for you spending this time with us. We've already hit our time limit.
I'm glad to see Wayne again. I'm so excited. You've made my day.
Great to see you, and thanks for that great input. I will act on it for sure.
Yeah, we can get you all these tools. And what happened is Bethesda in Cincinnati donated $1 million to Tri-Health to create these tools for employees going through the pandemic, and they've been nice enough to allow us to give them nationwide to whoever would use them. Because the goal was to not only help Tri-Health employees, but to help everyone's employees.
I would love that. It would be great.
I'll be sure and connect you all by email after the show. Thank you very much. Appreciate you, Quint. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Everyone say bye to Quint and let us know what resonated with you from what Quint said earlier today. And if you have a couple more minutes, I got a couple questions for you, if that's okay.
I won't have as great answers as Quint, but I'll be happy to. I do have a couple minutes. I'll be happy to answer anything I can.
Okay, great. So just really quickly, I wanted to a lot of folks are not familiar with your organization, which is a great organization, what you're doing. Give a quick synopsis, quick summary, just a little bit about your organization, employee size, what area you cover, and that sort of, because it's quite extraordinary what your organization is doing.
I'm always happy to talk about my organization. I love it here. So the Harris Center for Mental Health and IDD we are the local mental health authority for Harris County, which includes the city of Houston. Most people don't know county names, right? But we know the cities. And so we have about 2,400 dedicated employees who specifically focus on behavioral health and intellectual and developmental disabilities or IDD needs. And we do that as kind of the safety net provider for the city of Houston and the surrounding county, which is Harris County. We have about 4.8 million people who live in our catchment area, if you will. And when they have limited resources or have very significant needs, very complex scenarios and cases in lives, they often rely upon us to provide that care and treatment for them. And so we serve, last year we served a little over 88,000 unique people here in Harris County, which is, for a behavioral health provider, is pretty large. We're on the larger end in terms of behavioral health organizations.
Absolutely. No, you guys are doing a fantastic job. And just look at some of the comments coming in. Thank you for everyone being here and saying hello to Quint. And we got a few more minutes we're spending with Wayne. Definitely want to ask you this question, Wayne. When it comes to leadership, do you feel that leadership, people are just kind of born with those innate qualities, or it's more of a learned skill? From your perspective, what kind of have you seen in terms of the different leadership styles? And do you think it's more of a born quality, or it's something that can be learned?
I think it's learned, because I think whatever leadership talents I might have, I've frankly absorbed and learned and been mentored by really tremendous leaders. I think about the way I try and engage in my organization today, and it is probably very, very different than how I might have intuitively done it had I not had such great mentors. Quint mentioned we were at JPS. We were an organization that contracted with his group, and my CEO there was a tremendous leader and had huge impact on me, and in some ways probably turned my natural leadership tendencies 180 degrees, right? And so if we were only if the only tools were available were those that we were born with, I'm not sure I would be anywhere near the leader that I am today, because most of what I know was taught and made available, frankly, by watching others and trying to absorb and thinking, that's tremendous. He's a great, we've all seen him, right? That he is an outstanding leader. How do I do more of that? How do I try and use some of that or draw that out of my employees? But trying to do it in a way that is genuine, right? I don't want to just mimic somebody. I want it to change me. I want to be the kind of leader who can be authentic and show up and share that I'm in long-term recovery, and also at the same time, hopefully inspire enough confidence that people feel like we've got this under control and we're headed in the right direction. Yeah,
absolutely. No, and it gives other people freedom to speak if they have an issue, which I love. I love that you're basically supplying that psychological safety that that Quint was talking about, just allowing a safe place for people to talk about it. From your perspective, what do you think are some of the ways that Quint's training, like let's say in the Hardwiring for Excellence and your prior experience working with his training, where are some of those things that have stuck with you that you actually still use today? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah. A lot of things, frankly, and a lot of it is in some of his early books. I've got several of the books he's written that are on my shelf, literally almost with arm's reach right here of where I'm talking today. But the connecting with employees, I spend a pretty significant amount of time trying to engage with employees. You know, we do senior leader rounding, as he describes in some of his books, and frankly, it's some of the best time. The most enjoyable things I do often are when I'm doing that rounding. And COVID's caused some challenges. Because I've tried to be hesitant. I didn't want to go into one of my sites and carry risk in there. And so trying to figure out how to do that in an electronic time frame, you know, how to be flexible. I have a video I do for my employees about one a week that I'll send out to employees. But early on in the pandemic, it was like one a day. Like I would send out a video almost every day. We had a whole feedback loop, which I think is the other important thing, is having employees have a way to have a voice and ask their questions and seek clarification. And then the other big thing, you know, and he probably wouldn't want me trying to succinctly describe his work because it's far more than can fit in a couple of quick comments, but is helping connect to the why, helping people understand, why are we doing this work? What is it about this? Why are we doing this thing? How does that contribute to our quality, our success, to our clients' recovery, whatever that may be, but helping people connect to the why in terms of their passion and mission in the organization.
And I think this might have been before you came in, but he just announced he's got a new book coming out called The Calling, and he's offered it to those who are on this program. So you have an opportunity to get a copy of his newest book, which I think you'll love, because it kind of goes more into that why. Because he talked about how when folks first start, they're just their tank is full, their bank account, emotional bank account is full, and I think he used a lighter. The lighter is on, and they're full flame, but then after a while, it starts to dim, and so he's tapping into how do we keep that light going? How do we keep that energy going? So you'll be a part of that. We had Lona agrees with you, by the way. She says so much of leadership is learned and practiced. So she agrees with you on learning leadership versus just being born with it. Because I know people sometimes use that term that, oh, they're a natural born leader or this, and I just don't know how much truth there is based on your response. No, not sure how much truth there is to that.
I'm hesitant about that. I'm sure there are people who do have some innate skills, but to limit our leadership group to those select individuals would be a loss, because there's lots of really good leaders with all kinds of different approaches and styles, right?
Exactly. Okay, so I have a question for you. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So who in your life inspires you to do better? And I want those in the comments to answer the same question. Who in your life inspires you to do better? Who's the first person you think of?
So the first person, frankly, is my son. I have an 8-year-old son, and I try every day to be the best dad I possibly can be. Now that means I have to be successful here too, right? Because being a successful dad means I'm able to support the family and help, do the things that they want to do and that are important. But he absolutely drives me every day to try and be a better person. And as you know, those little ones, they have a way of being authentic themselves, right?
Yes.
And,
Yes.
If you're missing the boat, they don't mind kind of calling you out on it. And so I have lots of people who, I see as examples that I look up to, and people that I try and follow and think about how they make the kind of impact in the world that they make. But he is the one that my most personal driver, I guess.
I love that. Okay, now I also have another question for you. So whenever it's for free and clear, we can travel freely, everything's good. Tell me, where's the first place you want to go vacation to?
Turks and Caicos.
Oh wow, that was quick.
Well, because I was actually scheduled to go to Turks and Caicos last June. We'd been planning it for like 2 years. We had it all down. It was booked, ready to go. Maybe more than 2 years. We've probably been planning that for 3 or 4 years, but we actually had it booked for like 18 months. And so we were set, had airline tickets, the whole bit. And then, as you know, in February, March, the world changed and that trip got canceled. And frankly, the island wasn't even allowing people to come onto the island. You couldn't get there even if you'd been willing to try and travel. Right. And so as soon as we can and we feel free and comfortable, that's back on our list for sure.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. Now, and I've certainly enjoyed the times I got a chance to get to know you recently. We're working on a very important search together. I wanted to ask you a question about leadership. What would be your top tip for leaders or aspiring leaders to be a better one?
The top tip is the part that gets me. I've got quite a few thoughts, but I would think probably it is the ability to balance engagement with employees and accountability for results, right? Like sometimes I think people think about those as exclusive, like you can either have engagement or you can drive accountability. And I think finding the balance of that employees, I think, often thrive in. At least I know I do, and I think many of those that in our organization do. And so finding out how to, meet the needs of those employees, engage them in a way that they are committed to the work, very much probably along the lines of Quint's new book that's coming out. I'm excited. I did not get to hear that part of it. But that part, as well as, we have to be accountable. We literally have, life altering services we deliver, and we need to be responsible for trying to meet as many of the needs and meet our community's behavioral health needs in any way we can. So that balancing act of that, I think, is critical as a new leader to cue on both sides of that.
So thinking about the first part what you mentioned, which is building the engagement, driving engagement, what are some of the ways that you utilize to help drive that engagement? Keep it going.
So look, there's a lot, but I try and start with trying to understand who they are, like to get to know them, right? We all have this kind of work part of us, and we show up and we spend a lot of time with each other. But just like I said, the thing that drives me a lot is my son. That's not what drives us, isn't always what's here within the walls of work. And so getting to know them, what's important to them, and then understanding how, and I ask a lot of questions. I ask almost every time I interact with employees, especially if there's feedback or evaluation time, or what can I do to be a better leader for you, right? And so try and literally ask the question, what's important to you? I do monthly rounding and meetings with those that report directly to me. And so, what's not working well in their perspective, and how can we fix that? How can we align things to how they feel good about it? And so, and kind of that open communication as well about how do you exchange that information? How do you find out and get that feedback on a routine basis, not just once. And okay, now I know a lot about John and what's going on with John and what's important. But we all evolve and things happen, and especially during this time, lots of stresses and strains in this process. So I think it falls on that more human side than the work side in terms of that initial engagement, and then the connecting to why. And I think we all do the work we do for different reasons. And if I understand what's important to John about this work and what drives him to do this, then I can often try and make sure that's aligned well with other assignments and other duties, and help him understand that how being successful here ultimately connects to that why as well.
Absolutely. And speaking of leaders, you're looking for an effective physician leader right now, a chief medical officer of your organization. And what a tremendous opportunity that is. I don't know if you wanted to briefly just touch on that for a moment before we move on.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Our previous chief medical officer retired after a long, dedicated career into public mental health. And as I mentioned, we're a very large organization for a dedicated specialty behavioral health provider. There aren't many out there that are our size, and so it's a unique opportunity, but also a unique challenge. We need a physician leader that can really kind of help lead our system forward, being responsible for not only physician services, provider services, but also our quality, our academic component. We do have a lot of relationships with a couple of the academic centers that are here in our community. And so it takes somebody with a great deal of experience and capacity and kind of willingness to lead themselves to be a great system leader for us. And we are looking for that. And I'm optimistic and hopeful. And we are diligently going through the process right now.
Yes. And I have been just thoroughly impressed with your leadership and the example that you're setting. So I'm very confident you're going to find the right leader in that role. So we have a lot of folks who have agreed with what you said, being an example, being a role model. Some of they said, well said, love the tips you shared. And also in terms of what drives them, we had some that said my mom and my siblings, some said myself, my family. So yeah, you're right. We all have different motivators, different folks that inspire us. So I want to thank you once again for your time today, Wayne. It's always great. I look forward to having you back on the show. Is any last words of encouragement you want to share with our group?
I just think that, especially for those that are focused in healthcare, this is a critical time for us, right? We've all gone through a pretty challenging period, and our community still needs us all at the same time, right? So we've got that interesting balancing point where we need to make sure we take care of ourselves and our colleagues and our families, and at the same time, our community's need for us is greater than ever, particularly in the behavioral health field. I believe that some of the consequences of this pandemic from a mental health perspective are still to come. I think we're going to see a lot more challenges related to that, even after we begin to kind of address some of the physical stuff with vaccines and loosening of some of the restrictions. I think the mental health component is going to come out pretty significantly. So take care of ourselves, take care of your colleagues, help them find the supports they need because our communities need all of us.
Well, this is how we feel about that and all that you're doing. Thank you very much, Wayne. You're doing an amazing job out there. And so appreciate everything. So thanks for your time today. Everybody who's watching today, thank you for your time. We want to say bye to everyone. Bye, everyone. And
bye, everybody.
Let us know what resonated with you in the comments. If you have a certain thing you heard that really resonated with you, let us know in the comments. And myself will read it. I'm sure Wayne will see it as well as Quint. So thank you for your time. Have a great rest of the day. And if you don't mind, just hang on for just a couple more seconds, Wayne, as we wrap up the stream. But thank you for watching, everyone. Jonathan, let me know when it's okay to go ahead and cut it. Oh, lots of good comments coming in. Ninfa Escobar, she's been watching too, Wayne. She says thank you.
Very talented lady.
Okay, I think we are probably good.